So on today's video we're going to talk about the very first release on Boss Tuneage, the Goober Patrol Vehicle Derrick split 7-inch single. So for this video I'm going to talk about the split 7-inch single, our first release specifically, rather than both bands. You'll find separate videos about Vehicle Derrick and Goober Patrol on the channel elsewhere. So early 1990, we're there ready to do the first single. As mentioned on other videos, the original idea with the split 7-inch single was to do it as a split between Vehicle Derrick, who are a local band to me based in Boston, with my own band that I was in at the time called Sick Bus. But when Sick Bus split up, we decided we'd try for an out-of-town band, and the immediate choice for that was Goober Patrol, who said yes. So both bands went into the recording studio in January 1990 to record their sides. I remember, I think Goober Patrol's side cost 60 quid to record, but I could be wrong about that. And they went to Purple Rain Studios to record that, which was just setting up, I think. I think it was quite a new studio at the time. And Vehicle Derrick went to a studio called Gems in Frampton, this small village south of Boston, and had two attempts at recording their single. The first attempt was actually 3 songs, but they re-recorded it with the 2 songs that ended up on the split 7-inch. This also explains why the flyers that went out at that time, because I'd already printed the flyers, say that it's a 6-track 7-inch. But unfortunately, after you've done 3,000 flyers and they're out there, you couldn't really get those back. So we did have a couple. I remember one fanzine did actually sort of print the flyer of the advert for the split 7-inch and underlined all these things I'd said in the flyer that these are not true. You know, because I did put things like buy this 7-inch and it'll increase your sex drive and things like this. And yeah, he took it a little bit too seriously, I think. So obviously, when you look at the 7-inch single, you can tell this was done on a very tight budget. The sleeves were photocopied A3 paper, and we put both bands upside down to each other, so the idea being that whichever way you looked at it, it looked like the front cover. But these were actually photocopied on A3 sheets, and then I'd put flyers around the outside, and then we cut them all by hand, which took forever, I seem to remember. And I actually roboted my parents to help me. I seem to remember the time I was all sitting there cutting these out every night for what seemed like weeks. So yeah, so that's how it was. And we also decided, this is one of the first pressings, and the first pressing of 500, we actually printed 100 sleeves in 5 different colours on different coloured A3 sheets. So first pressing, you've either got blue, I think there was orange, cream. You know what, I can't actually remember all the 5 colours off the top of my head. I actually only have the blue copy of the first pressing, so I never kept a full set for myself. So the actual sleeve and the photocopied lyric sheet that came in it, which was double-sided, both bands did their own artwork for each side, were the first things to actually be made before I think the bands had even finished recording. So we got those all photocopied. We actually got them photocopied at a place in Cleethorpes, which is who also photocopied my fanzine for me at the time. So I'd also found a place to actually get the records pressed, and that was Indie Pressing Services in Peckham, and there's a separate video on this channel all about Indie Pressing Services in Peckham. There's quite a story. So yeah, so the masters went off over to a plant in Hungary, and the actual records came in a big box delivered by Parcel Line, who's a courier that no longer exists, on the 18th of April 1990, and then it was a case of assembling them all as quickly as I possibly could, because we had a gig on the 21st of April at Boston Indian Queen, which was the record launch show. So then of course there's the actual record itself, and it was good thick old quality vinyl that we used to get in Hungary, but the labels, they weren't great on printing record labels, so you had to keep it quite basic. So I originally typeset this out, and so the Goober Patrol side had their old logo. They changed to the logo that's on the front cover pretty much soon after that. But Vehicle Derrick I didn't actually have a logo for. When I actually went down and we typeset this at Indie Pressing Services when I went down with the master and the checkbook. And so Vehicle Derrick, the logo I'd done for them, I'd actually hand drawn from a sticker. You have to bear in mind that at school in art I got cheerfully hopeless on my school report. So the Vehicle Derrick logo is, yeah. So the launch show went quite well, and I think we sold about 60 copies that night, and I obviously gave the bands some copies as well. And I'd also been in touch with a lot of DIY distros, which were sort of basically people who would do mail orders of records, and the idea was at that point you'd send them sale or return to them, so they get like a wholesale price. So I think it was like minimum of 5. So with the distributors, when we send them out, if they were ordering 5 copies, we try and send them 1 of each colour sleeve. Yeah, so I don't know if there are any completists out there who've actually got all 5 sleeves of the first pressing, but if you have, well, thank you very much. I mean, looking at the sleeve, we do actually have on the first pressing, pay no more than £1.50 is on there. I was really keen that this was sort of like, you know, I was totally immersed in the DIY scene and the whole, you know, pay no more than on records that used to be there, and I wanted to make sure that we were following suit. So that's what happened. So we sent these all off, and I used to have a little invoice book, which was sort of like the carbon duplicate, and you just sort of like just put a sticker on and then biro it out, put it in with the records, and then I'd have a carbon copy of it so I could keep a record of who owed me what. More about that on another video. Yeah, and then obviously we put the address. Now I'd actually got, I think you can probably see it there, that those were actually stickers that got printed, and you'll see it when I show you like this, the repress of the record. And these are the days before you had computers that could print out stickers just, you know, from your desktop. So we actually had to send off to get those address stickers printed. I found a company in the back of the Exchange and Mart who were based in Butterwick, called Able Labels, I think, seemed to think, and you could get 1,000 stickers on a reel, and it was about a tenner or something like that. And did actually pick them up in person one time when I needed them urgently, and it was actually a vicar. It was the vicar was running this little sort of printing stickers on the side, which was quite bizarre. Yeah, so yeah, our address stickers were printed by a vicar. So we'd sent out these records to all these DIY distros, but you know, this is my first record. I wanted to get it in a record shop, and obviously at the time, a lot of the bands that used to come up to play in Boston were on Vinyl Solution, and I obviously saw on the back of Vinyl Solution's records, distributed by SRD with a phone number. So, like I say, the record came out in April '99, and I think by the middle of May I'd still got a few left, and I thought, yeah, I need to get this record into a shop, you know, just for my own thing. I wanted to go into a record shop and see it and flick through the racks and see a record I put out there. And so I phoned up SRD. I think this was on the 23rd of May or 22nd of May 1990, and I'll tell you how I know that in a minute. And I said, oh yeah, I'm doing this record, I want to put it out. And I spoke to a guy called Gareth, who was the label manager at SRD, and he was kind of a bit nondescript. He was like, oh yeah, well, yeah, what, yeah, send it down and we'll consider it and what have you. So the very day that he received it, that night, John Peel played it, which is like perfect timing. And so I called him back the next day to say, oh, did you hear, you know, John Peel played our single as well, you know? And he said, yeah, we heard, yeah, we'll take 200. And I was just like, oh, right, cool. I didn't have 200 left. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, we're going to get like 200 records into a record shop of my first release, and I've got a distributor, and wow, this is brilliant. Now, obviously, the first thing that came to mind is we're going to have to repress the record. Ooh. So we did the second pressing. So if you've got a red sleeve one of these, I'm afraid all 500 are the second pressing, so it's not a rarity as much as the other. You can here see the poly bags I used. I didn't know where to get 7-inch poly bags from, and I remember the one place where I did sort of find them, they were really expensive, and this was done on penny pinching the budget for this. So I think they were about 30 or 40 quid for 500 poly singles, and I'm thinking, I can't afford that, I've got no money. How are we going to do this? And I discovered this place close, I think in Skegness, I think it was that sold sandwich bags. So these are actually sandwich bags, and 1,000 of those were like £8. And I thought, well, that sounds all right. And at the time, you know, I was 17, and I remember my grandma, she lived away in Coventry, and she used to write to me with pocket money every week. So I saved up grandma's pocket money for 2 weeks to buy the poly sleeves. And then we sealed it down with the stickers printed by a vicar. So the main thing that you can see that's also different, apart from being in red, of course, and stuff, is that we got rid of the pay no more than, and it was replaced by distributed by SRD. Don't know if you can see that on there. And I actually photocopied the distributed by SRD from the back of one of the Sync 7-inches that I'd bought at the Indian Queen. So we then, I think it could have been actually that Goober Patrol had a gig. This was sort of getting into June, I think, where they were playing the Lady O in Arms. Aidan had put it on. And so we all went down in Goober Patrol in size Sierra. I think there was the three of them and me. And we picked up these records. And then Si had to drive from Peckham across to Tottenham, where SRD were based. And the rest of us, Ian, Stuart and myself, were sleeving the records into the sleeves in the car as he drove across London. And by the time we got there, it was really late and SRD was closed and we had to get to the gig. So I remember that SRD, the only thing we could think to do was post them through the letterbox. I know. So whoever opened up for SRD the next morning found 200 of these basically in the hallway, which I think they weren't too pleased about, but never mind, they got over it. And so the thing that I was kind of really keen with, like I said, is that I didn't want to be seen as sort of like a rip-off merchant. I really wanted this pay no more than ethos, even though we couldn't put pay no more than £1.50 on the 7-inch that went to SRD. So I think that I worked it out that I'm not happy if it's more than £1.99 in the shops. Yeah, £1.99 for a 7-inch back in 1990, and that was like high end. But the problem was I didn't really realise how distribution worked, because obviously the retail shop had to make some money, SRD had to make some money. So basically, once the record shop had put their margin on it, SRD had taken their cut for distributing, I got 80 pence back per sale from them, and I got a pretty good idea that the records actually cost more than 80 pence to make, or it was very much like they were break even. It wasn't, but I thought, sod it, I want to get my records into record shops, and you know, we'll sell hundreds. You know, they want 200 to begin with, you know, we're going to just sell loads of these. I'll have to repress it again, and then, you know, so yeah, so it went on. And I remember I got the first month's statement from SRD and they'd sold 107 copies, and I thought, wow, they've sold 100 in a month, this is brilliant, you know. Cool, that's like £86 or something back already. Yeah, fantastic. And then the second month sort of came through, and that brought me down to earth with a bump, because I think we sold 7 the second month, because obviously what I didn't realise then is that all SRD had done is they'd literally sent it to every indie shop in the country who'd all ordered one copy, and then it was a case of people actually buying it would be the sort of the ongoing sales. But I'd kind of thought, oh, I'm going to sell 100 a month for a short while, and I think that was, from that point, was when I'd agreed to do Damage, because I thought, this is just going to, I'm just going to be able to sell stuff, it's going to be fantastic. And then got brought down to earth with a bump very, very quickly after that. So we'd obviously, because we'd repressed this, we'd got sort of like obviously another 300 copies, so I gave some to the bands, and then the idea was that the bands would both go on tour that summer to basically try and sell the rest of them. Yeah, so probably in a lot of the second presses you might find lots of silly doodles and marker pens if you picked it up at one of the gigs, because basically bored on the way to the shows, everyone started sort of, you know, doodling and what have you in each one, so they're all kind of fairly unique if you got one of those. Lots of stupid sort of bits and pieces in there. So they did a heck of a lot of shows. We organised sort of like this tour, and Damage were on that tour as well, and I remember sort of July, August, and I think, yeah, July and August mainly, and a couple of shows in September between Goober Patrol, Vehicle Derek, or both of them, or them with Damage as well. So I think pretty much I wasn't at home that summer, pretty much. Spent a lot of time going around the country and just loving it, and I just used to go around with a little box when the bands played saying, do you want to buy a 7-inch single? You know, literally walking around the crowd to try and sell some, you know, to not much great effect, I have to admit, because the problem was that I'd sort of, you know, when this was all pre-internet, so there were lots of people I was sort of writing to around the country, and then I'd come up with a box and they go, oh, are you Aston? Oh, so-and-so from so-and-so zine, and then, you know, I'd just start chinwagging with them, and I didn't get around everyone to to actually sell the records, but we had a little merch table, and it was just great fun. It was, you know, it was naive, but we were all young and just enjoying it really. So I think, as well as sending out to DIY distros after that tour where we'd sold a few more, we still had some left, but then I started trading with a few labels in Europe, because we'd been reviewed in Maximum Rock and Roll, and used to start to get people, once Maximum Rock and Roll reviewed it, we used to start to get people sort of contacting us saying, would you like to trade? To varying degrees of success. You know, when you start to take obscure, you know, sort of French and German punk bands who weren't well known and swap it for the UK bands, a lot of that stuff hung around for quite a while. So generally the single got good reviews. I mean, we didn't get it into any, I don't think it was reviewed in any kind of like major mainstream music press. It was just purely fanzine reviews. But an aside of the Maximum Rock and Roll review was, obviously they printed my parents' address, because that was the address of the label. But, a couple of years later, when I was at university, I get a call from my mum saying, there are two guys here from Bulgaria who want to trade records, or and you just used to get random people from Europe who would kind of like follow where all these addresses were in the UK and think, oh well, maybe we'll be able to crash there or buy some records and stuff. Yeah, so that's quite how they found the house even, because I mean it was in the middle of nowhere. So that was something I hadn't really bargained for was going to happen. But you know, it was fun and it was learning, and I was learning all the time really. And the only thing that was becoming apparent was that, apart from like SRD paying me sort of a month in arrears for what was turning into like 7 or 8 copies a month rather than the 100 every month that I thought it was going to be, you know, it was quite slow progress to actually get money back from the people who'd taken the stuff sale or return. There's still quite a lot that are still 32 years on, still not paid me for them, but I'll explain in another video, probably on the Goober Patrol video, why that is. But yeah, we were off and running, and you know, to be honest, I don't think I actually even cared at the time. We weren't kind of covering our costs. It was just the thrill of getting a record out, getting it into record shops, and thinking, you know, anything is possible. So that's it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers!